Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ben Jussila, and I am joined today by the CEO and co-founder of ABI Lab, Gary Kaufman. And I am super excited to have you here today to talk about what you guys are doing in the incubator world outside of Cambridge, what things are looking like with regard to COVID-19 and how you see things moving forward. So thanks for joining us today, Gary.
Thank you for having me.
I'll go ahead and get us started on our 17 minutes here.
Okay.
Go ahead and introduce yourself and give us just a little bit of background.
So we founded ABI Lab about 5 years ago. We founded the facility because my partner, Dr. Neer, started incubating other companies. About 10 years ago, he incubated a company called Carrier Farm Therapeutics. And about 3 or 4 years in, he said, wow, this is great. This is fantastic. I want to incubate more companies. I said, well, we need to buy a building because we can't just do this on an informal basis. We need more space. So we bought our first building, which is right across the street from our second building. The first building is about 17,000 square feet. The second building that I'm in right now is 68,000 square feet.
Wow.
We've got about, at any one time, we can host anywhere from 40 to 60 companies. Some companies take more than one lab. Sometimes they take 3, 4, 5,000 square feet. So we don't just have startup companies in the sort of the seed round, the early stage round. We actually have companies, ABCAM, for instance, is in our building.
Oh, okay.
A large British company, as you may know. Wuji is in our building also. They're a large Chinese CRO. We have a spinoff from Sanofi Genzyme also in our building.
Oh, so you got quite a cast of characters in there.
Exactly. We've got the early stage, cancer research companies. Many of them started by someone who had someone very close to them affected by a certain type of rare cancer. And they decided, you know what, I'm going to put my resources, my Bill Gates money, if you will, into making a difference in the world. We also have companies that are sort of coming out of academia or coming out of a large company where they want to, the company doesn't give them the love that they feel they need for this particular type of therapy. They want to go off on their own. And then we've also got the ABCAMs and the Wujis and the Genzyme Sanofi kind of spin-offs.
Yeah, that's kind of a perfect segue into my next question, which was what kind of work is done by the groups there, especially some of the startups focusing on therapeutics for maybe rare diseases, like you said.
So we don't do any animal facilities here. We don't do any animal testing here. We do have an affiliation. My partner, Dr. Neer, does own part of an animal testing facility at the Tufts campus, which is about 25 minutes from here.
Okay.
All the R&D work is done here, and then they move on to the animal facility out in Grafton, which is 25 minutes from here. But people are doing, there's a host of different areas where people are working on everything from pancreatic cancer to Crohn's disease to Lyme disease. To one of the 200 different types of cancers. There's 180 different types of rare cancers that your large companies don't usually get involved with because of the economics, the payback. There are a lot of companies here that are working on that. We have one company working on shelf-stable hemoglobin, and we just helped them get a $9 million non-dilutable grant from the Department of Defense. And the reason why the Department of Defense is interested in that company is because they want every soldier around the world to be able to carry around their own hemoglobin. God forbid that person ever needs any type of surgery. If they're a rare type of blood, it makes it that much easier.
Yeah, that's Wow.
It's a really bizarre, covering every different facet of biotech research being done here in the building.
That's really cool. And it's, yeah, and it's not just locally or, within, the United States either. It sounds like you host everybody from everywhere.
It's like the United Nations here. There's on an average day, there's probably 15 or 20 languages being spoken in the two buildings. When we have, we host different types of networking events here, many different languages being spoken. It's like being at the United Nations in New York, and you're hosting different countries and different people. It's really fascinating to meet people from all over the world and to exchange ideas.
It sounds like a really stimulating environment to be in. How has that sort of shifted with regard to COVID-19? Have you guys stayed open? What have operations look like on the day-to-day?
So we have stayed open. In Massachusetts, we are deemed essential by the governor, so we've never closed. We have, of course, shifted some of or increased some of our personal building owner responsibilities. We've ramped up the cleaning in the building, the sanitizing of every surface in the building. We've also clamped down on visitors into the building. We've clamped down on deliveries and packages into the building. And as of May 1st, we're starting a testing regimen with digital thermometers.
Nice.
Unfortunately, the COVID situation has caused us to cancel all of our networking events and lunch and learns and things like that on a temporary basis. And I hope we can ramp those back up because, that's really where 1 + 1 = 3 or 4. When scientists are able to get together, exchange ideas, hear new ways of attacking different therapies. And that's where the great ideas, the aha moments come from. And that's why I think it's great to have 30, 40, 50 companies in the same building exchanging ideas because different people look at things totally different.
That's a really great way to just foster creativity and collaboration. That's really cool. Have you guys been impacted differently than other lab spaces in the area? Are there any sort of advantages that you guys have had, drawbacks?
Well, our facility, which is about 25 minutes from Cambridge, because a lot of the facilities in Boston closed because they were not able to social distance. A number of the facilities in Boston and Cambridge are packed in. People are packed in, and it's impossible for people to stay 6 feet apart from each other. It's impossible to utilize the elevators and not be that close to each other. So I'm not really sure how those people are going to move forward, given the reopening. I remember when I was a kid going to high school, and our high school was not big enough, and we had to go in 2 different sessions, a 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. session, and then a 1:30 to 5:30 session. I think a lot of buildings are going to have to do that until the vaccine is out there. And for somebody doing experiments, that's going to be a real issue. And I think that's where our facility is in better shape because we're much more spread out. The real estate where we are is much less expensive, so we're able to build bigger spaces.
Yeah, it sounds like that's one of the maybe the biggest advantages that you guys have is just space and you're not in the epicenter over there.
Correct.
And
I think that's going to be affected in all big cities. I mean, do you really want to get on a subway in New York City and go to your job? The mass transit is a big question in my mind. How is that going to be done? Are they going to put a number of people on mass transit, half empty cars to get to jobs? It's a big question. I think the facilities who have substantial amounts of parking where people can drive and be social distance for the next 12 to 18 months are really going to benefit, and I think are going to really attract people, whether they're here in Boston or they're in Portland or San Francisco or San Diego, the other hubs for life science.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to see too how much work has been able to shift, sort of shift remotely or work from home.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I mean, I'm working from home right now.
Okay. Of course, lab work can't be done at home, but
right.
Percentage of biotech business gets done on computers. So all of your marketing and financial people and human resources people, I think will continue to work from home, but you can't do lab experiments. There's no such thing, to my knowledge at least, to home office. So
yeah, I mean, much as I want to have a garage lab someday, it's not happening today.
There's probably somebody out there working on it right now as we speak, Ben, but I'm not aware of anything like that.
We've got an audience question here. And it's, are you guys going digital for networking and community benefit for ABI Lab?
So we are starting to do new equipment training and also office hours on a virtual basis, correct. So we have relationships with Thermo Fisher, with McDermott, Will and Emery, with Alera Health, with Eppendorf, and they give free office hours to the tenants. So that we're going digital. We're also setting up digital for new equipment training as well for your mass specs, for your Evo 7000, some of the more complicated pieces of equipment, fax machines that, that new people who come into the company, really need to get trained on that. So we are doing that digitally now. Frankly, it is much better to do that in person, especially training on a new piece of equipment, but where you have to zig and zag in this COVID era. And so we're making it work. I think everyone the last 6 weeks has learned a lot about how to use Zoom and Facebook Live and some of the different online features.
Yeah, everybody's definitely gotten a crash course, especially the parents out there who are now not only working from home themselves, but also teaching their kids from home remotely.
Correct. I don't think I would make a very good homeschool teacher. My daughter is 22 years old and graduated from college because, I've got to do a shout out to all the parents in this country that have been balancing all that. It's a hard job. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of my colleagues are doing it right now, and absolute hats off, props to them. It's tough enough for me to keep my cats entertained right now, let alone a human child.
Yes. There was a funny article in the Wall Street Journal the other day about cats and dogs and how the dogs are so excited that we're all at home and we love the attention, and the cats are not that excited. And it was, if you have time, search through the Wall Street Journal. It was within the last few days. You chuckle out of it. So
I'll take a look. I've got a couple other questions here. So you mentioned when we were talking about public transit, some of those measures needing to stay in place for a while, people working from home when they can. How long? Do you have any sense of how long some of the changes in policy and practices you've put into place are going to stay in effect?
That's a good question. We're, everyone goes into the common areas with masks and gloves. The digital temperature reading I told you was going to start on May 1st. How long does that stay in effect? This is a week by week thing. More information is coming out on a daily basis. I suspect that by September 1st, everyone is going to be carrying around a card in their wallet, or maybe it's an app on their phone. I'm not exactly sure. I think I heard something say about CVS rolling out their Minute Clinic testing. I think it's going to be tested. There's going to be some type of nationwide testing protocol in the Walgreens and the CVS's and the Rite Aids and all the different these Minute Clinics and short-term clinics where people are going to get tested. I suspect that's going to happen. I suspect that by September we'll be doing something different, but who knows what it's going to be by November or December. There could be a brief time between September to December where people stop wearing masks and gloves, and then back in December, if the vaccine is not ready, which the experts say the vaccine will not be ready until the early 2021, we could be back to the digital thermostat and the gloves and everything else. So I think we have to take it on a week-by-week basis.
Yeah, that's. I mean, you can only do so much planning, right? You can try to project a week, 2 weeks, a month out, but something comes to light, and you just have to adjust.
And we've been very proactive in everything we've been doing in our 2 buildings. We have not had one case, either the employee or their family, coming down with COVID-19 because of partly because of our proactive nature in everything that we're doing. Now, that's not to say that in the next 6 months, I don't expect to see a few cases. I think every building is going to have some cases going forward, and we have a protocol for that in place as well, set up, so that we'll go in and do a deep cleaning when and if that happens. I think you just have to be ready for it. I think it's the new normal that's going to happen.
Yeah, it seems very much more a case of when, not if, right?
Yes, correct.
So in our last minute here, I'm going to try and wrap up one of the audience questions here with sort of a last question that I had. And so a couple of the questions here are like, have you seen any resident companies shifting their focus towards COVID-19 research or testing? And have you seen any change in the types of incubators? Do you think you'll see any change in the companies that are coming into the incubator? And I also want to add, what do you think this looks like moving forward in terms of biomedical research in your area and in general? And what do you think are maybe some of the silver linings or upshots of changes that have had to be made?
So we have seen some of the larger companies. Abcam, for one, I know, is working on a big COVID-19 project. I think not necessarily a vaccine, but more with regard to the proteins and the protein inhibitors as a result of possible therapies. I don't know all the science behind what they're doing, but I do know that they're doing something tied to that. We do try not to we try not to stick our nose too much into our companies. We want everyone to operate in a safe way in the building. That's our number one responsibility. But we're certainly not interrupting companies and telling them how to do their science. As far as a silver lining here, I think the biggest silver lining we're looking at is the education of the overall US population about what goes into biotech research, what goes into therapies, how long it takes, what the FDA backlog and red tape has been in the past. And there have been a number of articles about how quickly people have been able to get some of that red tape workarounds with the current, government. There have been some, nice workarounds with the FDA. I hope that some of that red tape goes away going forward, because I think that'll bring the drug cost down, and it will allow some companies to reach their approved therapies a little bit quicker. I'm not suggesting that anything gets done in a way that would not be safe for the population at large, but I think some of the red tape is unnecessary and could certainly speed up the process and may even be able to shorten the process by 6 months or a year, possibly. I don't think most of the population understands that it's about $1 billion for a therapy to make it from start to finish and approval of the FDA, and that maybe 90% of everything that is out there and being researched never even makes it to that point. So 90% of the companies are wasting a lot of money to try to get to that point. People just see the cost of the therapy and they think it's so expensive. They don't understand, in the past at least, they don't understand what goes behind it. And I think the silver lining is that people are understanding now what goes behind some of that. There's been a great amount of education about why does it take 18 months to come up with a vaccine? And I think that's fantastic that people have learned what the case is.
Yeah, I think that's, for me, that's one of the things that I've liked the most, is seeing an uptick in the amount of outreach and communication from the science community to the general public, and conversely, feedback in the other direction. And I'm hoping that that's something that sticks, is this increase in communication. That timer that went off was our 17-minute timer. So we're 17 minutes and change in science, but I just want to say thank you, Gary, for joining us. And I want to thank everybody in the audience for tagging along for this edition of 17 Minutes in Science. And I hope you all can stay well, stay healthy, and we'll navigate things one day at a time here.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Take care, Gary. Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.